surf may cause some coastal flooding and beach erosion. Wednesday, the wind southeast becoming variable, 15 to 25 knots. Rough seas and swell with sweet seas, 5 to 10 feet on the ocean, and 4 to 7 feet on Long Island Sound. Visibility occasionally below 1 mile in clear showers, thunderstorms, and fog. Tide 1 to 3 feet above normal, combined with rough surf may cause some coastal flooding and beach erosion. Wednesday night, the wind south 12 to 18 knots. Seas subsiding 4 to 8 feet on the ocean, 3 to 6 feet along the coast.
I decided I wanted an electric guitar, you know, and an amp, and like I wanted to rock somehow. And I like went in and just like bought like the guitar that looked coolest to me and an amp, and I really didn't even know the difference, you know what I mean? I wasn't like, oh, this is a bass and that's a guitar. I was just like, whatever, that one, it's just cool looking and I can afford it. And it was a Guild fretless Guild bass, and I didn't know like fretless from fretted, and I just brought the thing home and I'm like, you know, I was a little fucking dumb, like, I guess, you know, and I was like, oh, it's a bass. Oh, it's fretless.
I had always wanted to learn how to play the piano and stuff. There was a piano in my house, but I never learned any instrument. I never sang.
I took piano lessons when I was a little kid, and like I always wanted to play guitar, but mom, like, for some reason, just didn't want me to play guitar. I don't know why. And then my grandma got me a guitar for Christmas.
I had my first little kid drum set, I think, when I was 4. Just moved up from there. Little cans, buckets, and then my first formal drum kit, I think I was in 3rd grade.
And Shao, when did you start playing drums? Or was that the first instrument?
4th grade.
4th grade?
Yeah.
Why?
We all had to pick an instrument, and I didn't like any of the ones that.
What do you mean you had to pick an instrument? Like,
it's for 4th grade
oh, for
music
school?
class. So I had to go home with a list of what to pick, and my mom said, "Why don't you play the drums?" And I said, "Well, they don't offer that." She said, "We'll take private lessons." I said, "Okay."
Music was always like in my family big time. Like when I was real little, my dad we have like a music hour, and like after dinner, everyone would want to like go off and do their own thing, and he'd be like, music hour, and like, because we were little kids and you could tell us what to do. And we'd all go into the living room and he'd put on Johnny Cash records and Neil Diamond and like his shit, like, which was mostly like old country music and stuff. So like, I can recite like all of Johnny Cash's songs.
At a younger age, I was Bruce Springsteen. That was it. I had all his records. I knew all the words. I was into U2.
AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, U2.
Anything from like, you know, Zeppelin to like, I mean, I think the first love song I really dug was Evergreen by Barbra Streisand.
Around 3rd grade, I remember like getting my own first record, and that was a Kiss record.
I also got a little bit of music from my sister. I used to listen to the radio with her and like Husker Du.
Everybody thinks you're gay if you like Barbra Streisand.
First concert I went to was Oingo Boingo with Squeeze. That was really cool.
There were a couple of instances where I first heard punk rock, and that was from Billy Mole, who was in my 7th grade class when I went to an all-boys Catholic school, and he was playing Suicidal Tendencies. And the lyrics, I saw your mommy and your mommy's dead, you know, that was like, whoa, what is that, you know?
Geraldine, my other sister, 4 years older than me, around when she like just got into high school, so I guess I was in like 5th grade, 6th grade, she got into punk rock, and then that's how I got into punk rock. She was giving me mixed tapes with like Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, Plasmatics, all that stuff, Angry Smones, and I was like, whoa, and that just That was a turning point, massive turning point.
Wow, you know, and I'd have to like travel up to, you know, you'd hear about these shows at CB's on Sunday, and you'd be like, I gotta get to that. How do I get to that?
There was a kid in my neighborhood named Rick Connell, and we make this stuff called jungle juice, where like you go into like your parents' liquor cabinet and just kind of mix everything up, you know. So like you don't take too much of one thing, so you know, find out. But that guy Rick, like he had like all his punk rock tapes, like he was into like the Dead Kennedys and like the Agnes Samoans and Circle Jerks, and like he just like play this music. I'm like, what the fuck is this? You know, this is something, you know, I never heard it before, and I was really kind of taken by it.
I grew up in Basking Ridge in New Jersey. I knew Pete from soccer.
Everyone played in the same like Pee Wee soccer league, and you know, you're just like, oh, there's that Nito and the Steinkoff. Ugh.
When we were younger, we were in rival BMX gangs. That's where I first met Brian.
It was like we just kind of, it was a small enough town or something where, and we were all in the same age group, and you just kind of knew each other.
Pete wanted to beat me up at an 8th grade Christmas dance once.
Michelle would come
He
outside.
sent in one of his thugs to call me outside, but I wouldn't go because he had a knife.
I didn't have a knife.
The first guy that I started playing with was Shao. Like we had a band in like 7th grade called Plutonium. We thought it was the heaviest metal on earth, but then someone told us that it wasn't. So, I don't know what it is, but it's not Plutonium.
Pete and I started jamming in like 10th grade.
After school, we just go over there and just start playing together and just like having a good time.
We clicked as soon as we like, he came over and we plugged in and we like learned like Sunday Bloody Sunday together, and we were like, oh, this is great. We just kept playing it like day after day, and it was like, oh, we really, it's like a chemical reaction, dude. We fucking totally jammed good together, dude. You know, like whatever. And we were just like, that was it. You know, it never stopped after that. It was like perfect.
Then his neighbor named Sean played drums, and he used to come over, and then we started the Switch.
We like went to Sean's like brother's college and played like at some parties and stuff, and like some little bar in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and we're like, yeah, wow, you know, like drove in the little pickup truck and like drank beers the whole way, like going 100 miles an hour, throwing fucking cans out the like. So many times we should have died or something.
It was kind of cool because I was like 16 and go to bars and you get like a free bar tab.
We were psyched, you know, you're like 10th grade, you're like, we were going like college chicks, so, you know.
I remember being in gym class. Pete was there in my class, and I just struck up a conversation because he was on the soccer team, and I knew him from that. He said he had a band called The Switch.
We hung out, it was like me, Pete, and Greg, hung out exclusively all the time.
When we had our second band, which is me and Brian and Brad and Chuck Long.
And it was Brad Karma and the Absent-Minded Fruit Bats. Greg would just come over, and he was the kid who just hung out when you were jamming. And we were like, all right, you sing.
They started playing I Can't Explain by The Who. And they're like, why don't you get up and sing? So I got up and sang I Can't Explain and jumped around like crazy. All over the room. I sang the same verse over and over. And they were like, whoa, you should sing. And I said, okay. What else do we know? Like, do you know Blue Suede Shoes? Sure.
He rapped or yelled or kind of sang a little bit, like one note, whatever. Didn't matter. It was like, it was about the friendship, you know. And Shao and Pete had jammed, and Shao would always be like, we gotta jam, dude, we gotta jam. And then eventually we jammed with Shao, and that was actually 1987.
We wrote a song at Brian's house called Brain Dead.
It was called Brain Dead, and it was just totally retarded. It was about sitting around like, being brain dead.
Brain dead fool. Don't want to go to school. Don't want to get a job. Just want to drink a beer. Be a mindless blob. Something like that.
Sitting around, you don't want to sit. Thinking about thinking, don't want to deal with it. That's all I remember. It's the first line.
Like a phone rang in the song, and like the guy picked up and said, hello.
You get it. You're closer. That was the line, I think, to show the extreme laziness that we wanted to portray in the song Brain Dead. So the phone rings, and then someone says, you get it, you're closer.
It all started at my house, and at some point we started practicing at Greg's house.
We wrote a song called Set Me Free and a song called Slave to Fashion.
My dad was the coolest guy. I mean, it was so loud from the attic. we played the same song over and over again, Set Me Free, over and over and over. And I would come downstairs and he'd be like, do you know any more songs?
We were sitting around in Greg's attic. We were like trying to think of a name for the band, and we're like, we want to be the somethings, like the Ramones. Like, gotta be the something. Gotta be a the band. And so we're like looking around, and everyone's thinking, and like I'm in my head, I'm like looking at stuff and like adding the in front of it, like the this, that.
Names, the wall, the chair, the floors.
The Cool Ranchers. Like, we'd always eat a Cool Ranch Doritos. Kind of glad that one didn't stick.
And I was wearing a pair of Docs like I am now. And like the Bouncing Souls. Like off the tag on the back, I think I must have looked at it and it says with Bouncing Souls. I'm like, the Bouncing Souls. And everyone's like, yeah. And I'm like, and we'll spell it like S-O-U-L, like soul. Souls, the Bouncing Souls. And that was it. Doc Martin.
And that was when we first started to develop into a band. Like, people would actually come over and watch us. Wig, mostly.
I mean, I guess the first show was the Knights of Columbus, which was in Burnsville.
You know, the classic, like, kids renting the Knights of Columbus Hall for like however many bucks and then making flyers and handing out flyers everywhere. We probably got like 100 kids, 50 to 100 kids. We were all psyched, you know.
Yeah, it got shut down by the time like the Souls played a couple songs by the cops for making too much noise.
Right on time, here come the cops, shutting it down. We're on stage and like there's the cop like shining the flashlight in my eyes and like.
After the show ended, we just drank our beer and stood around on the floor and set up the tables and like.
We like lined a couple of those up and then like one on like a down ramp, and we did like run across the room and like slide across it and then slide down it on sleeping bags, and we were like, we broke a couple of tables and we like snuck them out of there and threw them away so we wouldn't get in trouble. We just like had fun anyway, you know.
At that point, I loved the attention, and that was something I think deep inside I really had wanted. I was like, whoa, I can be a singer in a band and get all this attention.
It's great. It was great to go to a show. It was great to be in the pit, and it was great to be on stage playing. It was even better, you know. It's great. It's still great.
It was really cool. Like, I love playing with those guys, and it's kind of one of those moments where you're like, this is really cool. I'm gonna do this forever.
But that was the first show that there was any like shirts at. Brian made all the shirts in his basement.
Me and Ugly Bill, this kid who lived at my house, like when we were in high school, we had like 2 art tables set up, and we'd be like, let's have an art jam. And, like, we'd drink coffee and smoke butts and draw. Like, that's where I drew the Bouncing Souls guy, the first original version, and like the first batch of shirts. And we'd steal pocket tees, and they came like one in a package, and we'd go in with our flight jackets and like we'd put comics down this sleeve, carton of smokes down this sleeve, and like 2 like pocket tees in here, and then like zip up and go back out. We'd do that like once a night until we had like 50 or 60 shirts, and that was like the first batch of Bouncing Souls shirts.
I was like, well, we can't continue stealing t-shirts. And if we keep doing this, we'll have to take money and buy new t-shirts or whatever. And that was like step number 1, businessman 101 right there.
Somehow, someone got the idea to move to New Brunswick.
We were all, I think, in just that after high school, we don't want to go to college, but we know we don't want to go to college, but we don't know what to do.
Like, I applied to and got into like Mason Gross and like Virginia Commonwealth and like all these like pretty good art schools. Went and visited them, went to like the orientation, like thought I was gonna go to art school, and then like I was just like at the last minute sort of like I was like, fuck this.
I just remember being at Brian's house and being like, we gotta move to New Brunswick.
It was enough of an idea. The Bouncing Souls was enough of an idea where we were like right in the nick of time. Like me and Greg were supposed to go to college or something, and we were like, let's just blow it off and move into a punk house in New Brunswick, and we'll just like do the band and hang out. We're like, yes. And the second we said that, it was like such a relief.
Shal's parents saw the house and were like, there's no way you're living there. So he had to live at home, so his spot opened up, and I got it. And that's how I came to live with them. That was at 54 Welton Street, which was the first place we had in New Brunswick in '89, where we lived for about 10 months.
And that's kind of like when it all began. all the mayhem.
We're having parties all the time. It's dirty. We're getting ripped off by people because we live in the hood and we're a bunch of like green white kids from the suburbs.
That place was like right there in the projects. We were the only white people, and we were like, yeah, man, we're down, dude. We're totally down, man.
Very dangerous neighborhood as far as there's a drug dealer living next door.
I would get like jumped, or people like would chase me.
Fights in the street, the next door neighbors, brothers beating each other up.
There was once where Shal got like held up right outside our house.
Gunshots now and then, and screeching cars all the time.
It was also like open door policy. It was just like anybody, anything went, you know? We had a lot of like fucking fucked up criminals living there. It was crazy. People who are dead or in jail now.
People would just kind of show up and hiding from the cops. Like, we gotta hide somewhere. We're like, why? You know? We're like, okay.
Open door policy was scary. It was like riffraff coming through all the time. But that's what we wanted. We wanted that whole world. We wanted the party world and everything that came with it.
That's where we met Pedro. He lived there when we moved in.
They were happy guys, and they were, you know, they seemed to be about like doing stuff and making things happen. Like, there was a pool.
Pool was like an actual like cesspool. Like things were growing out of it.
You know, branches and green scum, and you know, Jimmy Hoffa was in there.
We'd clean it all night long. Cleaned it and cleaned it and cleaned it.
Within a night or two, we'd had it cleaned out.
It was like really like a clean, awesome fucking pool.
All the neighborhood kids, like we let them all come in and play in the pool all the time, so we got to be friends with everybody on the block. So it was like, as much as it was a little sketchy, it was like, I felt like at home when I got on that block, like people knew me. I remember I was getting fucking jumped one day right there, like on my street, and someone ran out of the house. Like, this was like 5 houses up from our house. Like, ran out and like, leave him alone, he's cool. Like, it was cool. Like, we like kind of broke that neighborhood in. Like, we got to be friends with everybody there. Like, we just couldn't be denied. We were so psyched about everything, and no one had a bad vibe in them. You know, we were just like, yeah, you know.
You know, it was a great like first like punk house. Like, we were just like, whatever, we don't live at home anymore, and everyone's excited, and we're all eating like Franks and beans and, you know, spaghetti like 7 nights a week, and there's a giant pile of dishes and, you know, rotten milk in the sink and whatnot. But it was a good time.
Shao would work all day and come and show up, and we'd be like drinking beers on the couch and being half wasted. And he would be so determined to get something done as far as music or whatever. And we would be like, chill out, man, you know, and that would just get him more burned up.
It was really a lot of fun at first when they moved in. It was fun, and then the fun kind of evaporated, and other people moved in who weren't a lot of fun at all.
There's just a couple months of time where just like people were just fucking shit up. It was weird. Like, cops would be at our house like looking for somebody like every day.
A couple of guys went into a frat, like broke into a frat during a party, like went into a basement and started walking off with a keg. They were like on acid. They're like walking off with a keg, and they got like confronted by all these frat boys, and they like beat the shit out of them with crowbars.
Just got kind of out of control after a while.
So they just kind of got sick of the house and decided to, you know, just abandon it and move to another place.
And we found one in Somerset, about half a mile outside of New Brunswick border.
We ended up moving somewhere that was too quiet and kind of lame, and we only lived there for like a year.
The band was chugging along at a slow pace. We probably had a few shows a month. Everybody was working their own jobs.
All we knew was like what we didn't want to do. Forever, the story of the Bouncing Souls is really just, we knew what we didn't want to do. You know, we knew we didn't want to go to college, and we knew we didn't want to like get these serious jobs. We knew we didn't want to like grow up and do what everyone our age was doing, and like we weren't done hanging out together and having fun and playing and drinking beer and fucking off.
So we looked for another place, and that was when we found Commercial Avenue.
So that's where we had like the best house, which was 174, which was like kind of like the golden era of the New Brunswick punk houses.
I remember going to look at the house. We looked around the house like, this is great. It's huge. It has a basement. There was a old pot roast in the oven, which was really nasty. It was really dirty to begin with. Perfect for us.
It had a basement for the band, and like rooms on top of rooms on top of rooms that you could divide in half and thirds and just like squeeze people in every corner.
You know, a lot of people came and went, like different roommates and, you know, people filling in. But at one time, I think we had like 10 or 11 people living there. You know, it was packed.
Live at 174, again, it's, you know, like reworking the entire, you know, environment to suit them or whatever they were into at the time. They got into surfing while they were living at that house.
They would come back from surfing and like go up to the bathtub and rinse their wetsuits. And so the bathtub was all sand and just like there was wetsuits hanging everywhere.
They screwed hooks into the ceiling so that they could hang their surfboards.
At one point, there was like a mini ramp in the living room.
You like could skate through the living room and like do a trick in the kitchen and then back through the doorway.
And we hammered guitars, old guitars, Sears guitars up on the wall.
I mean, the walls were just like graffiti, just posters, like they were covered like everywhere, just with shit.
Anytime we were silk screening the shirts in the living room, something else got a screen on it. The window had a screen on it. All the way down the stairwell had all Bouncing Souls screens on it.
Baseball bats by the front door because it was a shitty neighborhood. Really crappy neighborhood. The house got robbed a bunch of times. Bunch of times.
There was like 10 BMX bikes in this living room and like couch here, couch there.
There was no TV. There was a TV in the house. It got no reception, and you could kind of watch it with a VCR, but the VCR got stolen. So there was no distraction from that. You were left in your environment to make your own fun.
One day, they decided to play golf in the house.
Skater Dave wanted to put a fire pole in from the attic down to the basement. He's like smacking a hole in the ceiling. We're like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm gonna put in a fire pole. And we're like, you can't do that. He's like, oh, okay.
Always something had to be going on. Like you know, you'd miss it if you like weren't there for a day.
It was like a bar almost. You know, people would be sitting around with guitars, playing punk songs, and always be like a stereo on somewhere.
We got to know them because also a guy who I lived with was Chris Coelho, who was the drummer for Sticks and Stones.
The Sticks and Stones house was like, it was a Prospect house.
Prospect Street was nuts. You had Lamar Vinoy, Rob Santello, Chris from Sticks and Stones, Brian Downey. All these guys are neurotic, you know, myself included.
We were busy reading and studying movies and this and that, and we had a bunch of wannabe thugs hanging out over at 174. I didn't know them personally, but my first thought of them was just like, whatever. The house filled with idiots, you know?
They had really good parties. You know, they had much better parties than we could ever have. We'd have a party and nobody would come over our house. They had parties and there'd be a ton of people there.
They always had parties. They had these, like, their annual backyard bash things. So one time we went over there, and that's where I first got to know them. They would have bands play there in the backyard.
It was a long time before we ever really got into kind of real gigs, so of course we just started inviting people over to the house.
We built a skate ramp on the right side of this huge garage, and then the left side we had a little stage. Figured we could charge people a couple bucks, they'd see a bunch of bands, and we could pay our bills. That would just be a group effort.
It'd be like, you know, like 7 bands and would go like afternoon to night.
You know, people would be skating, and like there was like, you know, like a couple kegs of beer, and then like a couple like almost like food stands, like a little carnival or something.
Anal Dave from the house was making like fritters or like vodka slushies and selling them for a couple bucks.
It was cool, like we started like our own scene.
They'd do some campus show, right? And there'd be like 400 kids at the show, right? They'd finish the set and they would say, hey, everyone come over to our house. You got 400 kids there. The thing about New Brunswick is everyone would go over their house.
We developed a system like for having a party where like we'd call the wall.
There was a space on the wall which had phone numbers of everyone that we knew.
Columns, like 3, 4 columns of just like numbers. Because it was like we'd have parties and we'd be like, write your number on the wall.
And just start making phone calls, and then you'd have like 500 kids like at the house.
The people on the wall call their friends, and it's all of a sudden it's like people from all over. From all the way down to Philly, all the way up to New York, out to DC. I don't know how people even found out. I mean, this is like before the internet, and I don't know how people like from so far away would like show up.
New Year's Eve parties were big.
At midnight, everyone went diving off the couches in this massive mosh pit. Beer flew everywhere.
Remember Lando like went out a window because he was like crowd surfing, and like his feet went out and broke a window, and it was just like people were fucking like had like just throwing fucking pots and pans like, ah! you'd have a party, and then the next morning, like, there'd be people on the couch, like, people laying around, like, that just, and they would just not leave. And it didn't matter. It would just be like a new member.
A really cool fact about Commercial Avenue was that we used to rake the living room.
You woke up the next day, and that was part of the whole process. And the first thing you'd have to do, there was a rake, and you just raked through the living room, like, raked garbage into, like, piles, so you could, like, walk to the kitchen, you know?
There's like hardwood floor, and you just get the rake out and rake it clean.
All the money that was made, like, would go towards the electric bill or the oil bill, because we always get these enormous bills. Because the place was like living in a garage. It was so drafty, you couldn't heat this house, you know?
And they refused to turn on their heat until Thanksgiving so that they had something to be thankful for. So I tried to hang out for about 15 minutes, and I was like, this sucks. I'm going back to my place where it's warm. I was like, all right, see you in the spring.
It was freezing all the time, so you'd be like sitting on the couch, like, with your hood up and your gloves and your jacket on, like, just sitting on the couch, like, there's 3 or 4 people like that. You'd get all the cats on your lap, like, to keep warm. And, like, people would just walk in. And just, like, you didn't know who they were. They'd just, like, walk in and sit down on the couch. You'd be like, what's up?
At one point, we all had a job at this place called Flying Frog Productions.
Say a business would rent out a carnival with booth games. So we would be the people that had come and set it up.
You had to, like, wear a fucking, like, one of those white, like, hats and, like, red and white striped, like, blazer. It was awful.
And the kids, there was no regulation of the kids playing the games, and they would just stand there and, I'm playing again, I'm playing again. Before you could set up the bottles, they'd knock the thing over, and you'd bend over to get the thing, and they'd throw the ball again.
It wasn't just a regular dunk booth that you'd see at a carnival. It was, you'd sit in the big, huge glass box, and there was a toilet above your head.
There was like a motivational dancer kind of guy, you know, kind of guy who's like, do the hustle, and like show you how to do it. And we'd have to go out in like different outfits, like a shark suit, and go on the dance floor and like play with the kids, you know.
I had to be a 3-headed dragon outside a Honda dealer.
Oh man.
By himself all day. Just by himself, man. They dropped me off, like, here's the suit. I put it on for half an hour. At times it's like 110 degrees in it, you know, and I'm just like,
Shao and Pete, I think, had to be a front and a back of a horse.
I think I was the ass.
That was what funded the band. It was like we all had to work towards that. The band wasn't making any money. So like you'd get your paycheck, and then everyone would have to kick in like $400, $300 or whatever towards mailing cards.
Before laptops were available to punk rock bands, you'd go to a gig, you'd put out a notebook and say, mailing list, write your address here.
You had a notebook with all these names, and then we'd make a mailing card. We'd get like a gig, like whatever. We'd party at our house on this date, show at the Roxy, like matinee with these bands, fill out each mailing card by hand, and then like stamp each one. And every month we had that project. For years and years we did that. One of the mailing cards, I did a drawing, and it was called the Penis Landscape. And so like we were getting calls that whole month with like angry parents, like, take my daughter off your mailing list, take my daughter off your mailing list. Ooh. What do you guys, we'd pick up the phone hello, like Santella would pick up the phone or something, there'd be some parent bitching.
Brian's artwork was great, and that's what kept it going.
8-ball was big deal. Everybody was wearing 8-ball jackets.
I think it was a joke and a reaction to that to make a 6-ball.
Everyone like who was part of that house was part of the Greenball crew.
There always had to be a crew and a posse. Like I was really into that.
I wasn't really into like their funk kind of thing. When I saw them live, it wasn't so much the music, it was more of the energy of the show.
My old band, Token Entry, they opened for us a couple times. They were nice, you know, it was just like, oh yeah, they seem like nice guys. And when we heard them play, we were just like, oh God, they're awful.
We sucked, but like a couple people knew it, but nobody had the heart to tell us. Sticks and Stones knew it.
I hated what they were playing. Like, it was terrible, but they had this energy then that's what you picked up on, kind of, you know. You really picked up on this vibe that they had.
We would just put everything we had into it. whether it be just dancing around and screaming and yelling, and it just made people dance.
It was like non-stop all the time. Like, we're gonna party, we're gonna play, and then we're gonna drink, and then we're gonna play, and then we're gonna practice. We're gonna make mailing lists, and we're gonna make mailing cards. Nah, it was just like, nah.
Commercial Ave eventually fell apart because people going in different directions, and the landlord eventually had enough with us, you know, and all our antics.
We were trying to explain to him that it was illegal for him to raise the rent like 25%.
And he said, "You have your law, and I have mine."
My integrity was not gonna let me pay more than $130 to live in that place because it was falling down around your ears, and we got robbed every holiday and all that shit.
More criminals, you know, like more like people like take advantage of us.
And I remember looking around and saying, well, this is gonna be over soon. Something in me clicked, and I said, what the hell, this TV doesn't work anymore. Why? It never worked. It only got 2 channels. So I was sitting on the couch, and there was one of the guitars, the old Sears guitars, that was hammered to the wall. And I grabbed the guitar off the wall and just started smashing the TV with it.
And it was just like, bam, like the noise that it made was awesome.
I think Matt found the vacuum cleaner and was plunging the vacuum cleaner into the TV, and then firecrackers came from somewhere.
There's a couple bottles of booze, like some kind of cinnamon firewater or some shit, and we smashed it on the radiator, just knowing that whenever, you know, in years to come, someone cranked that thing up, it would just stink.
We smashed the guitar into a wall, hung a toilet seat on it, just like we were just picking anything up that we could that was left and destroying it.
Brian had some kind of medieval thing with a mace or something, and a couple swords up in the attic, and I remember those going into the wall.
Kind of like destroyed to create kind of vibe, you know, like we have to like destroy this to like kind of move on.
And there was like literally nothing, we couldn't find anything left to break, and Dave went down and found an old fucking dirty old toilet in the basement and brought it all the way up.
I was like, whoa, Dave, what are you doing with the toilet? And he said, let's throw it off the roof.
We took it out on the roof of my bedroom, mine and Pete's bedroom, and he chucked it.
Just to fucking watch it explode.
That was like the end of Commercial Avenue, like that hitting the ground, you know?
Creatively, it was tough. Like, we didn't really write that many songs there, but we tried really hard.
I think we really developed as a band, like playing live shows and everything, was at City Gardens, because it was like where we grew up going to shows. And like you saw all your heroes play shows there. So like it was just an amazing thing to be on that stage and play shows there.
We played with like Secret All Times, we played with Gang of Four, we played with Rollins Band.
We opened up for Bad Brains, played with Agnostic Front.
Another show they did was they opened for Fugazi.
And I remember Ian Mackay was like, nice bass playing, man, to me, and I was like, whoa. I mean, I'm sure I sucked balls, man, but yeah, it was still nice to hear.
And we had a demo, and we put press kits together.
It was like manila envelope, and I'd decorate and do like original artwork on each one and make the envelope totally cool. Like, they're gonna love this, you know, like send them to all these fucking record labels.
And they got rejection notices, which they promptly hung in the bathroom door so they could sit on the toilet and reread them over and over again for inspiration.
I don't know why it didn't occur to us in the first place to do it ourselves, but it didn't, you know, we didn't have that, like, concept.
If like no one's gonna do it for you, just do it yourself. And it's kind of carried on for 13 years now, you know, same way.
And it's one thing to look at him now and go, yeah, well, look at him, you know, it's cushy. But 10, 11, 12 years ago, that's scary. That's not cushy. Not to take anything away from, you know, younger kids. I think right now, though, if you're like a teenager and you like punk rock, well, you've got examples of punk rock bands that have platinum records. You've got bands that are making millions of dollars. We didn't have that, you know? So we weren't choosing that. That's a different choice, you know? And when you do that, you're still choosing MTV.
Once we started doing things ourselves and we saw that we were going on that path, I think that's when the No MTV symbol came about. It was so empowering in a way.
And it feels sort of like if the Bouncing Souls do well enough and sell a lot of records and don't use MTV, just maybe like we're tipping the scales a little bit towards like a band can do it yourself.
That was when we were like, okay, let's put out our own record.
Putting a CD out, just everything was a fiasco. The studio We recorded at this place called The Warehouse in Philly, and the sound blows so bad. It sounds so bad.
The studio changed engineers, and the guy was an asshole. It just sucked. The whole experience kind of sucked.
It was like a transition period musically, because we were just trying anything as long as it was cohesively a song. That's what that record is. It's just like us learning how to play together. And so the music is like everywhere. It's kind of directionless. There's like hardcore, and then it's like, what is that over there?
I think they had this stuff recorded, and they were like, oh, we can't afford to put it out. We need all this money. And I was like, how much money do you need? And they were like, oh, it's like $2,000. We don't. I was like, that's not that much money. It's nothing.
Tim Chunks borrowed the money from his brother-in-law. We called it Chunksaw Records because we borrowed the money from Tim.
Because he talks like this, Tim Chunksaw. So Chunksaw Records. He says at everything.
You and you.